Hi, so this is Amedeo Beretta and the channel is Animation Pandemic. We're now looking at Conway's animation here. It's an iteration from previous version, so thank you for sending over the animation. Let's have a look at this thing. And yes, okay, cool. So it seems to me that you are moving back at times. I mean, it seems to me that you had something in the previous versions that you don't have anymore. And I don't know why is that, but I will try to point out where I think the previous versions were working a bit better. And I think one of the things that was definitely working better was the motion of the back hip on the jump. Now, if you look at your jump from the side view, you see how you're just simply translating the whole master up. That looks really robotic. It's not. It makes it very difficult to sell something that is already fairly difficult to sell, in my opinion, because the character's anatomy in this case is a bit difficult to handle, and if you just decide to translate the spine that way, the whole upper body that way, you're just going to make it more difficult for us to believe in your motion. Whereas if you go to, I think, a couple of previous versions ago, you will find out that, I don't know if this was the one. Yes, you will find out that there was feedback for you to suggest that the push will happen that way to create a nice line of action. I think the same thing was highlighted in the previous version. So you see that was the, if you look at this side of the screen, that was the feedback there. And then you would have a recoil at the top where the bump would finally pick up the speed. So I don't quite understand why you're backtracking there, because this is now nearly 1 month ago. So if there is a decision behind that, it's probably good to push it forward to begin with. But it seems to me that you're losing notes as you work along. So I don't know, it might be, rather than a 3D animation problem here, there may be, like it happens very often, of course, it may be in fact a problem with note taking. Perhaps you take your notes, or you don't take them and you just try to remember stuff, or perhaps you take your notes and you don't remember, you don't check them. But the problem is if you did take your notes and you said, okay, the bump goes last, then, and you were following them, then the bump wouldn't just translate one-to-one with the rest of the body now. This is a workflow issue, as in your personal workflow. I don't think it's a Maya issue here, because I realize that we keep repeating very often. In terms of splining, you are inheriting you went into splining and you're inheriting the lack of breakdown poses that you had earlier on. So in here, for instance, you didn't define a contact pose. This means that now, if you don't have a contact pose, if you're already going to down pose, you can't just spline this thing. I mean, you can't just hit spline and pretend and ask it to work. It won't work, because what you will need to do is you will need first a pose extended with the foot down in contact, and then you have the foot already planted on the ground. This just becomes a linear transition and thus becomes floaty, and it will attract all sort of feedback. I mean, a lot of people will start going there into the fine details of your animation and trying to understand why it doesn't work, and you will get more and more stuff to fix, whereas the only problem that you had was really that you didn't have a contact pose. That's it. So now, and that's true for any motion, even in here, you see that your weight goes down very low and you still don't have a contact pose there. So how could it be that this guy can hold his foot for so long in the air, the weight being so close to the ground, and still you have no contact with the floor? That's tricky. I wouldn't buy into it. I don't. As an audience, I'm thinking, So contact poses, you need them. You didn't have them in your blocking, you pay now. You have to devise them now, which is not a big deal for as long as you know it. You know, sometimes you are in a rush and you just set down all the downs and you think, okay, I will take care of the contact poses, for as long as you know it. Then I would probably delay this arm now by 3-4 frames, because it seems it's a bit too deliberate in moving forward, whereas really it's just supposed to be a reaction to the slash. And in here again, you're missing the contact pose, and in here you're missing the kickoff pose. So this foot really can't lift now, and it can't lift now because the weight is still between this guy and this guy. See, you're not really moving the weight, so, and you're already lifting. It should lift maybe it could lift maybe a couple of frames after the weight has moved, but can't lift now. Well, not that I believe of. Okay, let's put it down that way. Then again, I'm ready to be corrected. I mean, maybe next time you show me that this works, and I'm going to buy into it. The jump is suffering from the fact that you don't have a contact. You don't have a kickoff pose for this guy. You do have a kickoff pose for this guy, but I would imagine that. Let me just check what's going on there. I would imagine that as you jump forward, you would probably have to rotate the hip a bit clockwise from the top view just to help this guy being a better contact pose, if you see what I mean. So maybe the forward hip could be a bit more in this direction. That could help, because the problem here is that you're leaving the ground. You're leaving the ground with 4 feet at the same time. That cannot be on a quadruped. It's just not possible, I think, to have that, unless it's a very deliberate action, which is not what the guy is doing here. And you know why it's happening? It's because you're keeping your bum in the air, which is contrary to what you were doing just a few versions ago. So, or what I suggest you did. Then I don't remember now anymore if you ever got around doing that. So again, there you're missing kickoff poses, and you have the same kickoff pose for the foot, so you don't have any push perceived. As we watch the animation, we're not going to buy into it. As the landing goes, I cannot quite understand why your back feet are going in that direction, then all of a sudden they land to the back. I don't quite understand how that is even a possibility. You see how the feet in here are traveling that way, and then all of a sudden they just land vertically down. Just cannot be that. I mean, or rather, you can do whatever you want because it's animation, but if you want me to buy into the fact that this is realistic creature animation, I won't be able to. Not with this kind of motion. I mean, look at what the feet are doing. They're going up this way, and then they're coming back down here. So this is the arc. I can't. I really don't buy into it. Sorry. So I think you should try address my previous feedback if you want to have something a bit more believable. But that's my opinion anyway. And in here, certainly not both feet are landing on the very same frame. Yeah, you will find out that felines and very agile creatures actually can land almost simultaneously on the same frame, but if you delay even so slightly by 1 frame, or just change the pose a bit with the foot roll, it will look a lot better in animation. Because the problem is that we know it's 3D animation, so whenever we see something that to us feels mechanical, like 2 things moving exactly at the same time, then we are more likely to disconnect and stop believing in your animation, which we don't want to do. We are here because we want to see good animation. We want to believe in your animation. But if we can't believe, it becomes a lot more difficult to understand. And same thing in here. Look at these 2 legs. They're moving exactly together. They're twinning, and they're landing exactly in the same spot. Again, you don't have a contact pose there for one leg and for the other, so bam, you're paying for a lack of breakdowns in splining. Again, not a big deal. Not a big deal at all, for as long as you know. And I'm not sure you do right now. So in here, I think my note was that this on the last tutorial was that this thing would this left arm would close in, so that as an anticipation it would then be able to slash down a lot better if it had an anticipation. And now you're just floating forward, and then it just moves. But it's a bit mysterious how you can swing that arm without any anticipation. And anticipation, really, if you think of it, is the basics of animation, one of the basic principles of animation, right? If you don't have anticipation, that's a very interesting motion you have in there. It might well be alien motion, but this guy is creature enough not to be not to be able to afford, let's say, the lack of anticipation, and right now you don't. There's a bit of uncertainty in the twisting of this arm. You see it twists this way, and then it changes its mind and it twists up again, and then it changes its mind and twists even more lower with the tip, and it goes into the floor and then comes back up vertically. This thing is all over the place. I don't know how tall this guy is. I would imagine that a human maybe can be this tall in here. So let's say this is 1.80 meters. So this is probably 2 meters of bone. This can be fairly heavy, So if you're lifting that thing up, you should probably lift it up. And I think this was in my previous tutorial about using animation layers. I think you could open this up a lot more on the way down, so that as you land, you could follow a nice arc in there and then come back and adjust your position. So let's check what's going on. And the other thing is, this guy has noticed there's the green box there. Again, one of my pieces of feedback from the previous feedback was do not show the top of the head, and that's here. So it seems to me you're not taking notes. You might be using my video as a note, but that's not the way it works. And I explain it. It's simple. If my video is half an hour long and you watched it once and you didn't take notes, you're not going to watch it the second time, because who would watch a feedback for more than once? If you watch this video twice, that's already 1 hour you spend watching the video. So you're not going to do it. So that means you need to write down these notes and you need to go through them one by one. Like, imagine the animation is a plane, and the plane cannot take off unless there is a pre-flight checklist. Your notes are that list. You don't submit the animation to the next review unless you have those tick boxes checked. Because if you do that, the interpretation in a company will be you either don't listen to feedback or you're very slow. And if you're very slow, that's fine. But if you change a lot of other stuff like you're doing here, but you don't tick those boxes, then the assumption is you're disregarding feedback. And this is not really looked upon nicely in a company, because they are paying you, remember, to follow feedback. Would you give someone, I don't know, £200 a day to have them do the stuff you need for your project and then realize that they're not doing it? I don't think you would. You need to pay someone for some service and see if that service doesn't get to you and see how you feel. I can assure you, you won't feel right. I know, because I've recruited people, I've directed projects, so I know how it feels when someone isn't just doing what they were supposed to do. But in here it's in your interest to do it, because you're here to improve your animation. So I think you need to look into your workflow, because I see a lot of the same stuff coming up over and over again, and I feel there's no technical issue here. The head is vertical. The head is showing us the top vertical side simply because you didn't rotate it. There is no problem with the 3D animation there. There's no problem with Maya. So the problem must be in the way you take notes. So I can't do much for you on that side. I can only tell you, take notes and use these notes as a pre-flight checklist. Your flight doesn't take off until you tick them off. Okay, and as you've seen in my other tutorials, these are my notes, and these notes are perhaps for I don't know, 3 weeks worth of work. Okay, so I have a book of notes. It's because I don't remember stuff. So cool, that's it. So I think those would be my notes. I would imagine that on this pose at around 25, I would have the elbow a lot lower, and I would kind of imagine that I would be seeing the top of this blade, so the other side, not this side in here, because this way I think I would be able to slash a lot lower and then raise and give me a nicer arc on the way up. I would also probably between 25 and 28 I would go a lot faster. I would probably even be already I don't know, somewhere over here, I suppose. Sorry for the bad drawings, just because it feels very slow. And then as I turn, this guy is ahead, is thinking about something and still looking down for his contact lenses, but this was a note we had long ago. he shouldn't be looking for his contact lenses, right? Remember that feedback. I do remember it. So yeah, I think he should be already looking at his next target, should be already eyeing it. He should be already like, I know what to do next, you know? I mean, the head should anticipate the motion. Instead, in here, it's just thinking about his business. I mean, this guy clearly has read the script, and the script says, you have to slash that thing and then the green box. Another guy is doing, yeah, well, I have to slash that and then slash that and then, you know, jump forward. And it's very, I mean, it feels like he's not paid enough to do his job. But this guy should be ecstatic about being a slimy monster, killing things and slashing through things, okay? So in here, in my opinion, you're just missing that point. The guy is alive, he should be looking, he should be active. And instead, it just becomes active in here, and then it starts looking somewhere else. It's like, well, there's someone to the right of the green box, is thinking, and then this is a lot more active, is a lot more focused, and then I don't know, in the end, I think now it's time for us to perhaps at frame 97 to start animating this camera, and on frame 105 to have another key in the camera and reframe, because now I really need to see the rest of the motion. I think we have graduated from not having to move the camera, and that's about it. So have fun, and please learn to take notes and to make a list and to address the notes, because I mean, this animation by now, in my opinion, could have been finished and it could look even quite nice, but I see that the only problem why this is not happening is because you're not addressing feedback. And I don't think, as I demonstrated, I don't think there's a technical issue here. I think it's a workflow issue. I'm sure you're not sitting down and thinking, yeah, I'm not going to address the notes, you know. It's not that, of course. That's it. Have fun. Bye bye.